Hello everybody, happy to be here together with Anne-Lise. We will be talking a bit more about inflation and consumer behavior. Especially in these special times, it's a topic which is top of mind, right? Kindly introducing myself, I'm Joris, a partner at EyeSee. EyeSee is a specialist in behavioral research. We have offices in Europe, in the Americas, being in New York and Mexico, and also recently in Singapore. We pride ourselves to have developed a set of different methodologies, including online eye tracking, facial coding, and virtual shopping. Later, more about that one. And obviously, we use those different methodologies across a wide set of products, including shopper, advertising, and digital. So happy to be here and kindly also introducing Anne-Lise. Anne-Lise, who is the head of insight of CPW, which is the joint venture of Nestlé and General Mills.
Thank you very much, Joris. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm very, very happy to be part of the conversation too.
Today we find ourselves at a specific time. Consumer confidence is at a very low point. We just got out of COVID, then we got into the special operation of Russia in Ukraine, and it has some repercussions on how consumers feel. Obviously, we can learn from what has happened in the past, being it 2008, being some other crises, but at EyeSee we believe that every period has its specific conditions and parameters. Hence, it's important to understand how we need to act today and what are maybe some opportunities in these times of crisis. We consulted with consumers and asked them where they would expect to decrease their spending. There are some obvious ones, like eating out and traveling abroad, even post-COVID. There are some obvious ones like large purchases, for example, houses or a new car. But when we look across different regions, in this case the UK versus America, we noticed that in the US especially, folks were also thinking about reducing their spend on food and bev, household essentials, and other FMCG items. Over to Anne-Lise. Anne-Lise, what are some of the steps that your team at CPW is taking to brace for the inflation and adjust for the crisis, please?
Well, the environment today is obviously very unpredictable. Consumer behavior is impacted, and predicting any trend is extremely difficult, if not impossible, in such a moving context. So we really believe that staying close to our consumer is key to understand the changes of behavior. So we want to understand their sentiment living through the unprecedented crisis that on top follows COVID directly. How are they coping with all the changes happening, whether from a political, social or financial perspective? How are they reacting to it? What strategy do they actually put in place to best cope with it? How does it affect their purchasing and consumption behaviors? So for this, we have put in place different tools. One, we have different consumer communities around the globe that allows us to talk to consumers very regularly. It's about understanding their sentiment, understanding what changes they are making in their daily life to cope with the situation in general, but more specifically, obviously, their breakfast habits, because we know that behavior change will actually vary per eating occasion. Then, we also stay close to the behavioral facts. We track and monitor closely key facts that show if consumers are truly shifting behavior when they shop or consume our category. Relying purely on qualitative understanding may really give us wrong or biased signals. And finally, we also ensure that we keep learning with consumer in context as much as possible. Indeed, it was already difficult and complicated for consumers to project themselves before. Imagine that it's even more difficult now. So we always favor behavioral research as much as possible.
Aha! In context and measuring behavior. That sounds like music into my ears, Anne-Lise. Now, at EyeSee, what we did is we ran a comprehensive internal study. We ran some virtual shopping iterations across 5 hypothetical scenarios. First one being a current situation of the category. And just to be clear, we had 4 different categories. The first hypothesis was that we would increase the price by 25% for 1/3 of the products. Next, we increased the price by 25% for all products in the category. Then we decreased the volume by 20% for 1/3 of the products. And last but not least, we decreased the volume by 20% for all products of the specific category. Obviously, we acknowledge that a jump of 25% or a decrease of 20% might be a bit radical. We see more of a slow pace kind of increase across different categories. But obviously, we wanted to experiment on some of the impact that it would be generating. When looking at the results, we saw for the price increase for 1/3 of the products that the value share might be able to lift with 7%. Yeah? The total units drop with about 5%. Now, if we look at the price increase for the total, we have even a higher total value that we will be generating with the higher value share for some of the key products. But unfortunately, of course, still a unit share decrease. Logical, basic 101 economics, when we increase price, volume drops a bit. On the other hand, when we would be decreasing the volume for 1/3 of the product portfolio, we see a drop in terms of value. We have somewhat a similar kind of value share, again of 7%, if we compare it to the price increase of 1/3. We have obviously an increase in terms of the total units. Logical, as we have decreased the size, we will be compensating that with more units to have a similar kind of satisfaction. And last but not least, if we look at a volume decrease across the whole portfolio, we would have again a value share increase and a total value increase, but a slightly lower increase in unit share. What we have learned is that price anchors in context are absolutely key. Hence, be mindful to look at your own portfolio within a context and not just outside the category context. Talking about categories, Anne-Lise, where do you see some opportunities and challenges across specific categories?
Well, there is a general sense of anxiety and stress. Everyone is really concerned about the future, whether already suffering financial difficulties or not. And this is slightly different from COVID context that we saw before, because the insulated part of the population at the time was feeling more confident about the future than they are now. Now everyone is worried, and this is expected to get worse. And when it comes to actual impact on categories, we see that not all categories or brands get impacted the same way. Shoppers start deprioritizing some category or postponing some purchases. As your research shows, not all categories are impacted the same way. It makes total sense. This is really in line with my expectations. Clearly, we see that categories such as food or healthy products tend to suffer less because consumers prioritize them. And at the same time, consumers spend more time at home. They go out less, so they still need some me time. And so we also observe that indulgent products remain important as feel-good treats in difficult time in an affordable manner. The whole spectrum is really evolving.
When looking at different categories, we made a split between high frequently bought brands and low frequently bought brands. Focusing on the high frequency brands, we see across the growth in value about an increase of 15%. Obviously, when the whole category would be increasing price, we have the highest growth in value being in this case about 27%. In units, it's again economics 101, where we have with a price increase a drop in units and with the volume decrease a jump in units. Across the board, the penetration is around a stable 50%. But yet, when we talk about volume decreases, we see some opportunity to increase penetration even. The story is slightly different when we study low-frequency brands. growth in value increases with more than 10% when we have a price increase. However, when we look at a volume decrease, we see that for 1/3 of the products that receive that volume decrease, there's a drop in value. In terms of growth in units, a similar behavior as with the higher frequency in terms of the price increase impact on the growth in units. However, when we look at the volume decrease with 1/3, we see also a -3% versus an increase of 2% with the volume decrease across the board. Now, what really stands out is that when increasing the price for low frequency brands, we might be losing some penetration, especially for that 1/3 of products in scenario number 1. What does this mean? In case of low frequency brands, it is possible that consumers will be delaying their purchase. So they opt, in fact, to optimize their usage and wait to buy. Secondly, really important whenever we decrease the volume to support that with clear communication. We zoomed in on a couple of subsegments that are of interest. About 15% is a big pack for the best-selling brands, about 8% smaller packs for the best-selling brands, and then we have a 6% of private label. Now we noticed a big drop in that big pack range of the best-selling brand. It shifts, in fact, towards the smaller pack of that best-selling brand, jump from 8 to 17%. Some of you might assume that there would be an obvious shift towards private label, but we noticed that within body wash, the private label remains stable. Learning here, whenever we ingest or apply something onto our body, we wish to continue with our favorite brands. This might be the perfect opportunity to think about different sizes of packs within your portfolio to accommodate consumer needs and maybe introduce some innovation. In terms of high frequency, chips is an interesting category. When we increased the price with 1/3, we saw an obvious drop in penetration towards 26%. Now, linking to the previous slide, we saw an even bigger drop in the big pack of chips, going towards 11%. Again, the bigger pack is the most vulnerable, but also equally, we found out that consumers tend to explore different alternatives when the prices are increased. For chips specifically, consumers have a very strong anchor point in terms of what costs £1 or $1 for a specific SKU. When talking about shrinkflation, we need to be mindful of the category as such. Obviously, when the category is more uniform, it's more complex to decrease your specific SKUs. Now, when we have a category that is very different, having different standards in terms of volumes, for example, in laundry, you have pots, you have different types of bags and boxes, there it might be an easier opportunity to play with the volume. Depending on the physical relationship, there might be an impact towards the expectations of the consumers. Now, when those expectations are not really there, then we have more room for experimentation. Last category of interest, bacon. Bacon is a very special case. It seemed that over time, the price of bacon has been fluctuating dramatically. Equally, it seemed that the sensitivity towards price is rather absent. Secondly, it seemed to be very difficult for consumers to switch between brands. And last but not least, some of the bestsellers even increased their volumes when there is a price increase. When digging a bit deeper, it seemed that some of the consumers expected a higher level of quality when the price increases. Interesting. Anne-Lise, back over to you. What would be the biggest impact on consumer purchase decisions during inflation pressures?
Prices are increasing, and consumer disposable income remains stable at best. Their confidence level is decreasing, so they start to rethink. They want to rebalance their spending priorities. So one could think shopper will look for the cheapest products. In fact, the majority do not revert to the cheapest brands. They adapt their shopping behavior differently. This may of course evolve, but this is what we see so far. As we look into how consumers adapt their shopping behavior, we see two main scenarios. The first one is that they stick to their favorite brand, so that they reduce any risk of being disappointed, so that they can ensure they still enjoy what they like. This is really a safer choice for them, and it also gives them the guarantee that there will be no waste. And that's really true, especially true when it comes to food. However, they may want better deals, that is better value, or smaller packs so that they can lower their out-of-pocket expenses. In this scenario, it will be important for them to find their favorite product at the right price, and so providing a variety of pack sizes or good deals will really be key for us. The second scenario is when they move to another brand in their own repertoire, looking for similar quality at a lower price. While we could see this as a risk, it can also represent an opportunity to attract new buyers. So it is important that we keep our product quality high, delivering a great taste and leveraging our brand strength. And again, we need to make sure that our product offering will remain accessible from a financial perspective. So in both scenarios, what we see is that leveraging the brand strength, maintaining product quality and taste is really going to be key. This represents an opportunity for consumers to not compromise on quality, yet still get an economical choice in a simple manner. Additionally, we need to ensure that our products remain financially accessible, playing with pack size and monitor the deals that we offer very closely so that we can offer the best value to our consumer. And to do this, again, we need to stay very close to our market and very close to our shoppers.
Alrighty, so we have two scenarios when price changes. First, when 1/3 of the product price increases, the price-sensitive shoppers might drop out and hence the value share decreases. But when the price increases on a full category level, then the penetration of the top brands remains stable. Depending on the category, we have different behavior of consumers following price changes. Looking at the low-frequency cat, we see that consumers typically shift within the same portfolio of the brand as a category leader, and if not possible, only then they will switch towards a private label. The story is slightly different with the high-frequency category. There will be, in fact, a switch from the category leader towards an exploration of brand alternatives outside the portfolio of the preferred brand. In conclusion, obviously there is a great opportunity when we have a price increase across the whole category. So we have an increase in growth with 90%, we have an increase in value with 19%, despite a loss in units of 5%. Unfortunately, that is not always possible. Based on several conversations with customers, we understood that Esselunga in Italy is, for example, keeping their prices stable. Or that in Australia, some of the retailers also put a step forward to create stability within the category. Then it is important for you as a brand to decide whether you will aim for a volume strategy or for a price strategy. Last but not least, every crisis obviously offers an opportunity. Please don't be afraid to lose. The first instinct is always to downsize the innovation. Maybe you should reconsider to reprioritize some of the innovations to obviously meet the opportunity of new occasions or different sizes in portfolio. Over to you again, Anne-Lise.
Well, I would say that staying close to consumers is really key to understand how they're changing their behavior. We need to ensure we understand their sentiment living through such an unprecedented crisis that is on top following COVID directly. This is best done using behavioral facts in context approaches. Then a big fear for brand manufacturers is that all consumers will move away to the cheapest available options. In fact, it will really depend on the category. It will depend on their habits, on their repertoire. Affordability is a combination of quality and price. So keeping our quality and taste high is a must during a crisis. Total value proposition of a brand still matters. Shoppers seek to maximize the value they get. And finally, we must also remember that consumers' reactions are not generic. Not all consumers or channels get impacted the same way. Not all categories or brands get impacted the same way. And not all market consumer groups react the same way. Sometimes we might overreact or not react promptly enough because of a headline or because of generalization. So this would be my main conclusions for the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for listening and tuning in. Obviously, we are always here for questions and sharing of thoughts. Feel free to reach out to the EyeSee team and or to Anne-Lise. Have a great day.